Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. This is the postgame pod. The Wolves blew out the Jazz on Thursday night behind a career Rob Dillingham performance and another flame-throwing game from Anthony Edwards as the Wolves withstood an injury to Julius Randle. We'll break it all down next. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to us by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. It's just a week from Sunday. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy weekend. The Timberwolves beat the Utah Jazz on Thursday night for their second win in as many days, winning both ends of a road back-to-back. Started slow, but finished strong. There's a lot to talk about from this one. It was awesome, and the Wolves got a career performance from Rob Dillingham, Jaylen Clark rotation minutes, Luka Garza rotation minutes, a Julius Randle injury. There's so much to get to in this one. First of all, though, a big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. And also a reminder, you could subscribe to the daily Locked On Wolves newsletter at lockedondaily.com. One-stop shop for all things Wolves and NBA. All right, let's go ahead and get into this thing. So, setting it up, obviously the Wolves coming off a big win in Phoenix on Wednesday at the time to move to, 5 games above 500 for the first time this season, a fourth straight win, a bit of a comeback win after a slow start in that game, and the Chris Finch ejection, the whole thing. So it was fair to be a little bit concerned about what was going to happen on Thursday night, right? Two games in 24 hours, both on the road, traveling from the desert to altitude. Utah, as we talked about on Thursday's show, just like they have not been playing all their best players together. There's a clear objective there in Utah about how much they want to win this year. The answer is not too much. So like between Lauri Markkanen and John Collins and Jordan Clarkson and all these guys, they were being Walker Kessler, being judicious about who is playing and when. So we didn't know who was going to play. It turns out they all played. And Jack and I pointed out on the postcast last night, Utah owns the Wolves pick. So it's in their best interest for the Wolves to be worse, right? To lose more games. So they played everybody. And we know the Wolves have struggled against bad teams this year. They're, around 500 against teams that are below 500, which is not good for a team that has, designs on being a top 4 seed at the very least in the Western Conference. So it's fair to be concerned headed into this game. And we learned that Mike Conley would be out with a sprained thumb. He, of course, played Wednesday, but now as Reid didn't play Wednesday, he was sick. Both Reid and Dillingham were on the injury reports Wednesday with injury report with illness on Wednesday, but they both played Thursday. So the Wolves were without Mike Conley, but that was the only significant absence for Minnesota. Again, fair to be concerned. And sure enough, true to form, unfortunately, the Wolves came out extremely flat. The offense looked lackadaisical. They just weren't locked in at all. The defense was okay, but what was happening is the Wolves were turning the ball over. Utah was getting easy stuff in transition early in the game, in the first quarter. And Minnesota never really got their half-court defense set. Utah made a couple of tough shots. They've got a couple of tough shot makers. I mean, I didn't mention Colin Sexton earlier, but Colin Sexton hit some tough shots in this game. When Jordan Clarkson got his chance, he did that as well. Sexton was obviously the bigger problem in this one, but Utah got off to a good start. It was 25-10. The Wolves were down by 15 points in the first quarter, and they ended up winning this game by 25. Safe to say they figured it out. And it became an onslaught. Like it was more, the defense was just okay for Minnesota. I mean, middle of the game, actually, the Wolves only gave up 44 points combined between the second and third quarters. So middle of the game, the Wolves defense was pretty good, especially third quarter. First and fourth quarter, not as much. Obviously, fourth quarter was garbage time. First quarter started really badly for Minnesota. But this was more about Minnesota's offense. And it was really impressive how they were able to generate open threes. And then when they did it, they made them. They struggled to shoot from outside the arc recently against Phoenix and other recent matchups where they were generating the open shots. They just weren't making them. Nickeil Alexander-Walker hit 5 threes in the Phoenix game. He hit 5 threes in this game. Reid was 4 for 5 from 3. Ant was 6 of 9. And Rob Dillingham was 3 of 5. And a lot of these were a couple were Rob walking into a 3 in transition because the transition defense was so bad and he's obviously willing to shoot the basketball. Others were, Rob skipped past to Nickeil in the corner for a 3. Ant finds a teammate outside the arc for a 3. They were actually generating the open looks instead of just taking tough contested looks or forced looks toward the end of the shot clock, or just, this is an early shot clock 3 because I'm open because I'm 3 feet beyond the arc and I'm just going to shoot it. There wasn't a whole lot of that. This was actual quality jumpers that Minnesota was able to generate in this game. And a big part of it was Ant. The scoring total is obviously what pops out, 36 points, which, by the way, 36 points on 18 shots is absurd. That's Jack pointed this out last night. That's 2 points per shot. Anything over a 1.2, 1.3 is pretty good. To generate 2 points per shot is nuts. 12 of 18 on field goal attempts. He was 6 of 9 on 2s and 6 of 9 on 3s, 6 of 7 at the free throw line. So he hit 6 3s, 6 2s, and 6 free throws. He also had 11 assists and only 3 turnovers in this game, which that's a ratio with as much as he's got the ball in his hands. That's a ratio the Timberwolves will absolutely accept. And he got 6 rebounds and he got 3 blocks. One of the most well-rounded games that we've seen from Ant. And there's all sorts of different stats floating around out there about the rarity of 36, 10 and I don't know, 36, 5 and 5 games. I think it's I think I think the stat I saw was Stephon Marbury and Ant are the only 2 Wolves players to ever have 35 plus points and 10 plus assists in a game, which shouldn't be surprising because, think about the limited number of triple doubles Cat got, and Garnett didn't have that many 35 plus scoring nights, right? He was doing a lot more on defense and on the glass and scoring consistently in the 25 to 30 range, but he didn't have that many 35 plus scoring nights. Towns had some triple doubles, but obviously the scoring wasn't there with all of those, and he didn't have that many triple doubles. Anyway, that's impressive. 35, 5 and 5, however you want to slice it and dice it. Some of the averages are unique to Wolves history too now. But this was just a stat stuffing performance in a good way. He was active. He was everywhere. The playmaking, the last 2 games, and I know turnovers were a problem in Phoenix, but if you go back and watch all of his assists from the games in Phoenix and in Salt Lake City this week, the assists are really impressive. There's very few of the, hey, I'm just swinging the ball around the perimeter and that guy takes a dribble and makes a shot and I get credit with an assist. These are legit. He's generating shots for teammates. Very impressive stuff because he still manages to efficiently shoot the ball. Now, thankfully, Utah, one of the worst defenses in the league, very little paint protection, very little rim protection. And, that certainly helped out, outside of Walker Kessler, who only played 27 minutes in this game. They don't really have a whole lot of other rim protection on this team, and Ant used that to his advantage. And on the flip side, he followed up a career high 4 blocks on Wednesday night with 3 blocks on Thursday. So he was active himself defensively. And, the perimeter defense for Minnesota, we'll talk about Jaylen Clark. Jaylen Clark was awesome once again, got rotation minutes, got into the game in the first quarter. Rob Dillingham, I thought, was actually pretty good defensively. He did get beat off the dribble a couple of times, but there was a possession where he got switched onto, who was it in the right corner? It might have been Markkanen or it was a bigger guy. It was a bigger guy that he ended up getting switched onto. And he sized him up, slid his feet, defended him all the way to the middle of the paint. And then I think Rudy got a block on the possession. It was textbook. It was either Rudy or Garza. Apparently, I'm forgetting all the other players involved, but it was an incredible play by Dillingham in the second half of the game, and the level to which he executed that, and the fact that he was ready to D up, even when he had a mismatch, and it would have been easy to be this dude's going to score on me. He actually D'd them up and slid them into help defense, directed them into where he knew the help would be in the middle of the floor instead of getting beat baseline, or instead of just giving it up, in O-lane and letting the guy shoot over him. He actually did the right thing, strategically, which shows a lot. for Rob Dillingham, because I've talked about this before with Dillingham. The only way that he hits the ceiling of what he needs to be is if he does that defensively. He's going to get beat a little bit. Guys are going to shoot over him. It's going to happen. But he's got to fight through screens. He's got to compete against mismatches. He's just got to give it his all. And he did that in this game. He looked locked in defensively, and that matters. A small, below average defender who tries is a lot better than a small below average defender who doesn't. That's the easiest way to say it. All right, I want to talk a little bit more about some of the other roles that some guys played, some kind of, guys that normally don't play rotation minutes. Like, you might look at the box score and be like, oh, 14 Luka Garza minutes and 17 Jaylen Clark. Must have been a lot of garbage time. Well, there was, but a lot of that was actual rotation minutes for these guys. Julius Randle got hurt. We'll talk about that. And it looks like it could be something that keeps him out for a period of time. As of now, as of this recording, we don't know exactly how long, but we'll talk about that. And we'll talk about studs and duds and all that stuff coming up here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at TurboTax. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. Now, Taxes is matching with the TurboTax expert who could do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return. Will you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day? An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right. So Timberwolves put this thing away basically by halftime. I know it was only like a 4-point lead for the Wolves at halftime, but you could kind of feel where this thing was going. In the third quarter, they put their foot down. They outscored Utah 44-22 in the third quarter, and this was an onslaught, and there were a lot of guys involved in it. Like across the board, the guys played well. Julius Randle appeared, I think the Wolves did call it a groin injury. It certainly looked like a groin injury. Early second quarter, soft tissue, maybe hopefully strained, maybe pulled groin muscle, and he limped off the court, a possession later. And that meant that we're going to see a lot more Reid, who didn't play Wednesday due to illness. So credit to Chris Finch. He actually only ended up playing 28 minutes. Luka Garza got a little bit more run. Started the third quarter. But with the way the game went, really, as soon as the Wolves pulled away in the third quarter, then it was like, all right, we could just go straight Luka here for the most part. And Luka played with Rudy, which I don't think we've really seen much at all before. Typically, Luka Garza has only played when Rudy's not been available, and they played together in this game. I haven't dug into what that actual, the plus minus that those guys on the floor together was, but I think it was very good. And I said this after Wednesday's game when Luka got that early stint with Nas unavailable. He got an early stint against Phoenix and didn't play well. Well, that's a team that Luka's going to struggle against because of the personnel that the Suns have. Utah's the team he can play against. And I'm not talking just simply skill level, although that's part of it, but also the style of play and the personnel on the court in terms of the type of players that they are, not just skill level. And so, moving forward, we'll see with Julius Randle, but depending on the opponent, if he's out for a period of time, we could see some Luka Garza at the 4 next to Rudy, or Luka Garza at the 5 next to Nas. And against certain opponents, we may not. We may see the Wolves go small. We may see McDaniels at the 4, which we've barely seen. Hopefully Josh Minott gets another opportunity. He looked better today, although not to where he needs to be activity level wise, versus what happened on Wednesday with his 13 seconds of, he played 13 seconds. It got pulled on Wednesday because he made a mistake. So maybe we'll see some Minott at the 4. That's a conversation. I mean, we'll see what happens against the Wizards on Saturday. And as we move forward, I'm just assuming with Randle, I don't have any information on this. It hasn't been announced or anything, but I'm assuming it's a multi-game absence for Julius Randle based on what it looked like. And so it'll be interesting to see what that rotation looks like. In this particular game, Luka Garza got run with the rotation and was really good. 16 points on 6 of 8 shooting, 4 rebounds. He made both of his 3-point attempts. He got to the line, knocked down both free throws. He had a block They went to him, like catch and shoot threes. He hit one in his first stint, and then he had a couple of post moves to score. In the second half, same thing. He hit another three. I think he scored on two different post opportunities, low post touches. And then he had one where he actually took, I can't remember who it was. It was somebody that he should have been able to, Sensabaugh or somebody. He took somebody off the dribble, dropped him off at the rim, and had a nice little baby hook in the middle of the paint. That was nice. Like, this was as good of a game as you're going to see from Luka Garza. It was great. And I do think he's a legit, I don't know that he's a all-the-time rotation caliber big for a team like the Wolves and the way they play and where they want to go, but he's as good as it's going to get for like a 10th, 11th guy who's you need him for 12 minutes. All right, he's got you. He's going to play hard. He's going to knock down open shots. He's going to be active on the glass. Like, he's going to do all those things. And this was like, he was really legitimately good in this game, and it wasn't all garbage time stuff. Jaylen Clark saw first quarter minutes in this game. He had 6 points on 2 of 3 shooting. Actually looked pretty comfortable. He airballed a 3, but then he came right back and hit one. Got fouled at one point, made another shot in the paint. He had 3 rebounds in 17 minutes, which I think given more time, he's going to rebound his position even better. I mean, that's not bad for 17 minutes from a guard for him to get 3 rebounds. Like, that's actually a pretty reasonable rebound rate. But I think he'll do better than that. Like, that was one of the things I liked about him coming out of UCLA is even though he's undersized, he's tough. He's got a nose for the basketball, a little bit like, and I made this comparison yesterday, some of the same qualities that Josh Minott had coming out of college. Not as athletic, certainly not as big, but in terms of being around the ball and being able to rebound his position better than most guys at his position, I think is legit. He had 2 steals. One was he just hunted Keontae George, or I don't remember if it was George or if it was Jordan Clarkson. I think it was George in the open court. Just hunted him down and stole the ball from behind, led to a dunk for Ant on the other end. 2 steals, 2 assists, no turnovers in 17 minutes because the ball's not going to be in his hands unless he's at the rim or he's shooting an open 3. But he looks every bit the part of a, let's get 20 minutes out of this guy and he'll just annoy the crap out of the other team. Like, that's just what he's going to do. He had 5 fouls in the 17 minutes. That's fine. He knows he's not going to play more than 17 minutes, right? They're fouls of aggression. They're not silly Jaden fouls or silly cat fouls from the past. They're not frustration fouls from Ant or Rudy. Like, these were all legit. I'm just playing really hard defense, and sometimes they're going to catch you with my hand in the cookie jar type fouls. And we'll take that. And now through 2 games, he's like a plus 45 or plus 46 or something in like 30-something minutes between the Phoenix game and the Utah game. Just nuts. He should get plenty of run against Washington on Saturday. He wasn't in the game during all of garbage time because the Wolves wanted to get some other guys in. And you know, Clark is still, like, this is still his first full season of basketball since tearing his Achilles. So it makes sense to, you know, if you're going to give somebody a couple, if you need somebody to take a rest in garbage time, you know, get Leonard Miller out there, let Rob Dillingham get some more reps and rest Clark a little bit. But he'll get some run against the Wizards on Saturday, given the opponent, given that DiVincenzo's obviously still out. Like, he'll get to play. He was really good. And I thought the rotations were managed well by Chris Finch. Again, I touched on how he adjusted the big man rotation against Phoenix on Wednesday out of necessity. He came into this game assuming the backcourt rotation would be different because he didn't have Mike Conley, but then had to adjust on the fly in the front court too because of Julius Randle's injury. And I think going with the Garza Gobert pairing and just saying like, hey, this should work. That it did work. Like, that was the right call. Giving Minott a few minutes before the game was out of reach. I think he came in, was it early fourth quarter? So the game was basically out of reach. Whenever it was, Minott got an opportunity before like true garbage time when Miller and Ingles came in, which was, that's why Clark came out of the game, is because Joe Ingles had to get run in Utah, even though he didn't get a shot off, which was funny, by the way. So it was nice that Minott got a few extra minutes that weren't technically garbage time, just to allow him to get back out there after his rough performance Wednesday. Because if Randle's out for any period of time, like I said, I think they're going to need him. I think they're going to need to, or they should rely on him. Well, I shouldn't say it that way. They should give him an opportunity to give them a reason to rely on him, because I still think there's a rotation guy in there, and I'll keep saying it. But I also understand why he didn't play first half minutes in this game based on what happened Wednesday. I completely support what Chris Finch did there. Overall in this game, though, I mean, Utah only had 23 rebounds. in this game. Now, there weren't that many rebounds to go around, but the Wolves were still a plus 16 on the glass. They only allowed 3 offensive rebounds to Utah, which was something I was worried about. If Utah was going to make a game out of this, it was going to be offensive glass would impact that. They had 3 offensive rebounds. Minnesota only turned it over 12 times, which is good. Utah doesn't typically turn teams over, so it's not a great number, but given the number of possessions in this game, like that was good. The shooting display, we talked about how the Wolves generated open threes. The Wolves were nearly 60% in this game. They were 59.8% from the floor, 55.3% from three, 21 of 38. I already rattled off, Luka was a perfect 2 for 2. Nas was 4 for 5. Rob was 3 for 5. Ant was 6 for 9. Nikhil was 5 for 10. And they still got to the line 24 times. Were impactful in the paint against a team that they should have been impactful in the paint against. They actually ended up only a +2 down there. But I thought that they did a good job getting to the basket, generating foul calls against Utah. That was all really positive. All right. Let's talk real quickly. I guess we already kind of did the trickle-down effect on Randle. So we'll do studs and duds, and then we'll peek ahead at what's next. The Wolves have the Wizards on Saturday, so we'll talk for a minute about that matchup. It's all upcoming here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. It's this Sunday, or excuse me, a week from this Sunday. I wish it was this Sunday. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sports. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. I really enjoy both prop betting and live betting during the Super Bowl. Prop bets are my absolute favorite. Like, I'll do some of the silly ones that are basically coin tosses, like the coin toss. Like, that's, I don't know, it's fun to do that. Put a few bucks on that. But also some of the, like, just based on the matchup, like some first quarter stuff, prop bets for who's going to have the lead at halftime, stuff like that. And then live betting, the same deal. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field. And the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that is icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. All right. Let's do studs and duds, and then I want to talk about this Wizards game on Saturday. So studs and duds, actually, this is pretty easy, and I kind of already went through. I'd spent more time on individual guys during the body of the podcast than I typically would in a post-game pod, but Ant was incredible. Talked about his playmaking, 36 points and 18 shots, his otherworldly efficiency, 11 assists, 6 rebounds, 3 blocks, only 6 turnovers, 6 of 9 on 3-point attempts in this game for Ant. And the Wolves, by the way, coming into this game, I meant to say this earlier, coming into this game, Minnesota had become a top 15 offense, which we can agree that's a threshold they should have crossed a long time ago, maybe over a year ago, but they never really did last year. Like, they were always kind of in the 15 to 20-ish range in terms of league ranking for offensive efficiency. This year, they were consistently a spot or two better, but like the offense never really showed improvement until recently. We talked the other day about how they've been a top 10 offense in the month of January. And right now I'm just talking overall season. Coming into this game and after this game, Minnesota is now the 14th best offense in the league. And according to Cleaning the Glass, they're only 0.1. They're only a 10th of a point per 100 possessions behind the Lakers for 13th. Don't look now, but the Wolves now have a top 5 defense and a top 15 offense. And there aren't very many teams that can say that. In fact, the only other teams that can say that have a top 5 defense and a top 15 offense are the Houston Rockets, obviously the OKC, obviously the OKC Thunder, the Memphis Grizzlies, and I'm sorry. Memphis is not a top 5 defensive team. So actually that's it. That's it. Top 5 defense and a top 15 offense. It's Minnesota. It's Houston. And that's it. Memphis is the 7th best defense, the 5th best offense. Boston's 6th and 3rd. And the Knicks are down at 13th defensively, 2nd offensively. Cleveland's 1st in offense, 9th in defense. So, I mean, it's one of those, like, weird kind of out of the blue stats, but that's not a bad formula. It's basically what they did last year, but the defense isn't quite as good and the offense is a little bit better. But the defense, both units are continuing to improve for Minnesota. And all that to say, like, the point here is Ant's efficiency is a huge reason for this. His playmaking, his decision-making, it's all trending in the right direction at the right time for Minnesota. And with a 5-game homestand, the Wolves need to start to play better at home. Winnable games, like this very well could be and should be the jumping off point. And Ant is a big reason for that. He certainly was in this game. I'm going to say another stud in this game would have to be Rob Dillingham off the bench. Hit some big shots when the game was still in doubt early. Was kind of a big jolt. I mean, the Wolves were down 4 at the end of the first quarter. Like, he gave them a jolt when they were down 15 in the first quarter. Came in, did some good stuff, and finished with 19 points on 11 shots, 3 of 5 on threes, 8 assists. He did have 4 turnovers, but it wasn't like super egregious, right? Like, I thought the decision making was good, and really, really strong performance from Rob in 23 minutes was a plus 23. My third stud is going to be Rudy. I haven't talked about Rudy Gobert much, and for as kind of, I don't know, pedestrian as his performance was against Phoenix on Wednesday, this was a really nice Rudy performance. I meant to hit this in the first segment because of the first quarter, like just kind of going chronologically. But early in the game, Rudy had some very early opportunities on the short roll. Just in the middle of the defense, Utah was giving him opportunities. The decision making was subpar early for Rudy, but the Wolves kept going to him, and he got a couple of buckets, he got a couple of assists, and was solid. Like, I thought he ultimately played well offensively and was certainly a presence on defense in a building where he did that for many years. 16 points on 6 of 8 shooting, got to the line 6 times and made 4 of them. He had 9 rebounds. He also had 5 assists and 4 blocks with only 1 turnover. If Rudy's putting up a 5 assist, 4 block night and only turned it over once, that means something was going right for Rudy and the Wolves, because means the ball was in his hands and he was making quick and good decisions without turning it over. And it means he was active defensively, and block shots aren't always an indicator of that, but we've seen those blocks tick up recently for Rudy, because I just think, I don't know if it's something like the middle of the season, instead of getting tired, these guys are finally like, their legs are under them, they've got this rhythm, or they're just playing harder as a team. I don't know. But the defense overall has been so much better here recently. And I know that wasn't like the calling card for the Wolves in this game. It was the offense, but there were some really strong defensive moments as well. We talked about Jaylen Clark. We talked about Dillingham's compete level defensively, and Gobert here was very good too. All right, those are my 3 studs. Obviously, Jaylen Clark played well. Luka Garza played well. Nikhil, 15 points, 5 made threes, 5 assists for Nikhil was really good too. I don't have any duds. I really don't. I mean, nobody played poorly for Minnesota. Jaylen had a very quiet game, 4 points on 1 of 4 shooting, 4 rebounds, 31 minutes, but I thought he was really good defensively. I mean, Utah, like, they've got some guys that can score off the dribble. I mean, obviously, Lauri Markkanen's a really good player. Colin Sexton's probably the most dangerous player overall. Jordan Clarkson can be dangerous, although he was so bad defensively in this game that, as he often is, and the offense wasn't good enough to offset that by any stretch. Keyonte George was really good. He had 23 points on a perfect 7 of 7 shooting. So if this was Locked On Jazz, we'd be talking a lot about Keyonte George. Let's put it that way. I'm sure David Locke is doing just that on today's Locked On Jazz. All right, that's all for this one. Really nice win. Great. It would be great to see them not get down by 15 in the first quarter against a team like this and but thankfully they worked their way back quickly enough that there became some garbage time at the end, right? And still played 35 minutes, but overall, a really solid, impressive win, and really feels one that definitely feels good. And now that's 5 in a row. The Wolves are 6 above 500. They're now a half game out of the 6th spot in the Western Conference, and they're only, I think, a game and a half out of the 4th spot in the Western Conference. Next up is the Washington Wizards. Now, the Washington Wizards are still an NBA team, but can we say barely? I mean, they've lost 16 games in a row. They've had 2 losing streaks of at least 15 games this season now. Trade deadline's coming up. Like, Kyle Kuzma is definitely going to get traded. I mean, Jonas Valanciunas probably will get traded. Jack and I were joking on the postcast last night. Like, neither of us off the top of our heads could name the Wizards coach. And I don't know. I feel like I could name the vast majority of the 30 NBA coaches, and I couldn't remember it. And I had looked it up when they played the Wizards earlier in January. It's Brian Keefe, by the way, former longtime Thunder assistant, had been a couple other places. Most recently with the Nets, I think, was like their defensive coordinator or something the last couple years. But anyway, this is like, the Wolves should win this game easily, hands down. They need to get out to a big start. Like the Wizards lost by like 38 to the Lakers on Thursday night. These dudes don't want to play basketball. They just don't. And Minnesota has struggled at home. If they get down early to the Wizards with the way the crowd, like the Atlanta game Monday was just like, it's like a morgue in Target Center. And now that the Wolves have won 5 in a row and there's good vibes, like hopefully on a Saturday night, things get off to a good start and everybody's rolling. Like it feels much better. But the Wolves need to get off to a good start. They need to blow this team out. There's no excuses. I don't think there's a line yet. I'm going to check real quick on FanDuel, just because it's we're still more than 24 hours out. But this is absolutely there's no line yet. Absolutely a game that the Wolves should win by double figures, and there's no excuse if they don't. Obviously, it would expect no Julius Randle. The Wizards are dead last in offensive rating. They're dead last in defensive rating. It's not even really worth, like, I hate to say this, but like it's not even worth like digging into what they do and don't do well, because they really don't do anything well. I mean, they're 6-41. Like I'm going to pull this back up real quick. They do get off a lot of 3-point attempts, and they're 29th in percentage. So like that's what they're going to try and do. Like they've got Jordan Poole on the team, so he's ready to shoot. He's shooting over 9 threes a game, 39%. So like obviously that dude can score. You want to be careful there. It's the only thing they really do well offensively is jack shots through Jordan Poole, and when he gets hot, they can make some baskets. They're literally bottom 5 in every 4 factor, except for just barely outside the bottom 5 in turnover rate and offensive rebound rate. They don't turn it over a ton because they just get a lot of shots up. They play fast, like it's up and down, it's threes, it's get the ball up on the rim. That's kind of what they're doing. Like obviously Alex Sarr, there's some intrigue there, like the 19-year-old second overall pick. Like I excited to see him play again. And there's a couple of guys that should be in rotations around the league, but this is not a team that seems super interested in playing right now, and the Wolves should jump out on them. And if they can dictate terms by not turning it over, by securing the defensive glass, by running their offense, if they do everything that they did for 3.5 quarters against Utah, they should win this thing easily. All right. Postcast will be Saturday night on Locked On Sports Minnesota and YouTube. I believe our guy Luke will be back with Jack Borman, and then I'll be back on Monday with the postgame pod. We'll talk. Well, it'll be a half postgame pod, half preview. We'll talk a little bit about Wolves Wizards on Monday's show, and then we'll also peek ahead as at the rest of the homestand, which again, some winnable games in there. The Wolves have the Wizards on Saturday. They have the Kings leading into the trade deadline on Monday, and then the Bulls, and then the Rockets is obviously the toughest one, and that's the second night of a back-to-back next Thursday. And then Portland to close out the homestand. So we'll talk Washington game, we'll talk Sacramento game, we'll talk whole homestand on Monday, and that'll be coming your way then. All right. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. A reminder, you can subscribe to the daily Locked On Wolves newsletter at lockedondaily.com, Monday through Friday, your one-stop shop for all things Wolves. Plenty of Wolves-related links, not just about this show, but some other articles out there about the Wolves, some national NBA stuff. You'll be able to get that all if you subscribe at lockedondaily.com. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.